can only gain experiences based on the environments you're in. So really, the only thing I could really do was just continue doing what I was doing, especially in the professional game, that it's so ruthless, it's so cutthroat. The culture is still an old boys club. That really opened my eyes into, wow, this is very different. And I think if you can be humble and be honest about where you're at in your journey, people will want to help. Timing is everything, and be patient.
Welcome people to another episode of the Coach Gerald Lami podcast. Your host, Coach Gerald. And today I'm joined by a special guest, Manisha Tailor, MBE, author, foundation lead face coach at QPR. I probably missed out more stuff on that list, but Manisha, welcome. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
No, thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our chat.
No, brilliant. Thank you. I'm sure I missed out a lot on that list as well. What other things you've achieved? I was reading, I was doing my journalist work, obviously, to make sure that I've got the right information. But the achievements that you've got so far, like I said earlier on, an MBE author, qualified teacher, a speaker, UEFA B coach, working in the academy system, like where do you find the motivation to keep going and to add more tools, to your toolbox?
I think, since I was younger, I've always been very inquisitive.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to explore new and different things. And my motivation, especially as I became older, is definitely my brother, my twin brother, and him suffering from a mental health breakdown. And that completely threw me, it because of the nature of his condition. And it was such that for somebody that you're born with, that you share everything together, and football was our love and passion. And that's really where my drive came from, in terms of loving football and having this, this love and passion for the sport, but then later on taking a career change. But going back to the, being born with somebody and you share all these experiences with, and then through his illness when we were 18, all of a sudden it was taken away, because his condition was such that it started off with depression, went into schizophrenia, back and forth in terms of the mental health continuum, which is probably the easiest way to describe it, to the point where he lost all control and awareness of himself and others.
Oh, wow.
He was sectioned for a period of time, and he just did not recognize us. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know who our family were. And it's a shock, because you're looking at somebody and you want to have a conversation with them, and you want to recollect all the things that you used to do together. And this person's looking at you and doesn't even know who you are. Doesn't even know what you're saying to them. And through that time, it's really taught me, because it's been 22 years now, and fortunately he's in a place where we can look after him at home now. And he still only speaks to the voices that he hears.
Okay.
But if we say things in very short statements, so I'll come on to this. So it definitely teaches you a lot about teaching and communication, which I've then been able to take into my coaching, working with different types of players. That if you say things to him in small segments, and say in an assertive manner, maybe use your hand-eye coordination and gestures, he understands the instructions. So we've come a long way in the 22 years. I'd like to think that he is aware of who I am and who we are. We can't say for sure, and we don't know 100%, because he doesn't say anything other than the voices. And if we ask him to do certain things, it's bizarre, because he can understand how to do it.
Okay.
As long as it's one thing.
Yeah.
Anything more than one at a time would be a bit too much. And in terms of responses, you'd get maybe a yes or a no, but that's really as far as it goes. But all of that has inspired me to want to be better. And everything initially was about how I could live the things that he would want to live.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So
yeah.
being in football, being in and around football, just wanting to achieve, wanting to better myself, all of that really came from passion, a love for my brother, but also like frustration and anger. I was really angry. I was angry for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for me, in terms of fueling that anger, yes, I would speak to people, and, you know, not many. I didn't want to talk about what was going on. And I definitely didn't want to talk about how I was feeling about it. But what I was able to do was to channel all that frustration and anger into myself.
Yeah.
And in a positive way, though, in, like I said, you know, whether it was academic, whether it was progressing. So when I was in teaching, I progressed in senior leadership very early on. So I qualified as a primary school teacher with a BA in education in 2001. So I was only 21, quite fresh-faced, young, going into it. And all of that time, like, that was a time where my brother was in a psychiatric unit. Nobody knew. I didn't let, didn't let anyone know, purely because I felt I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be treated any differently. You know, I've just embarked on this career. I'm new. And mental health wasn't spoken about. You know, things have evolved. There's greater conversations around it now, but definitely not when I was growing up, and definitely not when I qualified as a teacher. So I kept it quiet, but all that channeling of emotions and frustration really went into my career. So I became a trainee head teacher at 31. That was really young. And I was an assistant head teacher at 28. But went into senior leadership in various subjects, those who have worked in primary school. So I didn't specialize in PE or sport. I actually specialized in early childhood education. But football for me was just a love. I mean, I really enjoyed sport. I didn't want to teach sport, but I wanted to teach football. And it was funny because whenever we had PE with the kids, it was always my PPA cover. So that was always covered by other people anyway. So I hardly ever taught PE. And when I did, like, I remember teaching PE with reception, when I taught reception for a couple of years. And, you know, it was a lot of fun and it was great. You'd teach lots of, you know, gymnastics and lots of different types of multi-sports. I'm sure it's all very different now. But it really came from that passion and love for the sport, the connection with my brother. And like I said, that I was able to fuel that frustration and emotion into wanting to succeed. And then the career change really came in 2011, purely circumstance-based, because there was a lot going on at home. It was also a time where my mum had a triple heart bypass, and I was working as a trainee head and a deputy head teacher in a school that was quite far in terms of commute. So there was a lot going on for me, and I was also trying to complete my master's in leadership at the same time. So I thought the best thing probably would be to see out, because I was on an interim deputy headship post anyway. So I saw that out in August. I thought that I would take a school term out, so like September to December, hand in my dissertation, kind of, you know, be in a better head, you know, be in a better mind frame, I guess, as well, before I look for another post. But I passed my trainee headship and I got the NPQH, which is the National Professional Qualification for Headship. But in my head, it was really with the viewpoint of, when I go back in January, it will be in the school. And that might be a potential first headship, or it just might be going into school, being, you know, teaching again, and being maybe having a senior management role. I didn't ever think that I'd be working in football. You know, that wasn't even in my mind. What I did want to do, though, was wanted sport to be a massive part of my school. So a school that I was leading in, and I really wanted that because I saw the power of sport through my time in education. And although I was teaching full time and I was doing various other roles in schools, I was still coaching, but grassroots. I was helping to set up all the after school engagement with the kids, in relation to football for both boys and girls, lunchtime clubs. And, you know, this is a time where in the early 2000s where there were very few and limited opportunities for the children to access any other form of enrichment. You know, it was your basic, you do your lessons, and there were very few lunchtime activities or after school clubs. So, you know, I was in a position where I could say, start these things up, liaise with external agencies. Like I remember one of the schools I worked in was neighbouring Wembley Stadium. So I was able to link in with Wembley Learning Zone, was also able to link in with Rachel Yankee, which is where my relationship with her began. She ran her football program at our school, and was able to, what we were able to do, was provide not only football activity using a role model, but also use numeracy and literacy and football, and connect the education part of it together, which was really great. So through the conversation with her, she then kind of introduced me to coaching badges, because it's funny. So with my link with Rachel, she knew that I was coaching the team at the school, but I didn't have any coaching badges. It was just, I was a teacher, I liked football, I go on YouTube, you know, but that was about it really. It was just, right, kids, you know, make sure all the safeguarding was done properly, let's just have a great time. And when she told me about coaching badges, I thought, oh wow, right, I didn't know. Because the thing is, when it's an unfamiliar it's unfamiliar territory, isn't it? Like I knew about teaching, I didn't know that there were qualifications that existed in football, and also it's how to go about getting them. So she told me go to the county FA. So I went to Middlesex. In fact, I went to London FA, got onto my level 1, passed my level 1, was then introduced to Alex Welsh, who since 2000, and so passed my level 1 in 2010. Alex Welsh then since then has been a great mentor to me. He then he helped me along with Corey Donahue to get onto my level 2, because they noticed that, or recognized that there was some potential for growth in me, and they put me on a female development program. So, and I was still teaching full-time at this stage, but was, as well as coaching at Rachel's grassroots club. So as well as the schools coaching, I was also then working with Rachel at Gibbons Wreckers, which was a grassroots club that she had founded in Northwest London. And that was great. You know, I had a mixture of under 7s, 8s, maybe some under 9s. And, you know, you'd be there for a couple of hours, you know, with these kids who you knew that was the one thing that they were looking for, all voluntary. You know, we'd be there a lot earlier to check the pitches, you know, to scoop up any dog mess and all of that stuff. And it was great. You know, you may have limited equipment. At best, you've got, you know, a few footballs and things like that. But, you know, that was real coaching, and that was real, how do you connect and manage with the players? Because ultimately, unless you can connect with the players, I mean, it's all very good having all this football knowledge, but you need to be able to engage and get the best out of them. So, you know, that it was a great experience. I was there for quite a number of seasons, and through that whole journey. So from 2011, when Rachel then found out that I was no longer teaching full time, it was almost like a natural transition into, okay, well, let's see what else there is out there. Just while I'm still, I guess, you know, finding myself. And I found that I was able to reconnect with football. I was able to reconnect with some of these emotions that I was trying to detach myself with, because it just brought back these memories of, you know, when me and my brother, let's say, I'm going to use the word normal, but, you know, before his illness, things we were able to do together. And I found that as I was becoming more and more connected to football through the grassroots coaching, through then connecting with county FAs, like I said, that Alex was great in connecting me with other things. So, for example, education being one of them, and maybe thinking about, could that be a career pathway? I was then volunteering with Middlesex at the county with the girls. and trying to earn money through PPA cover. So I was working with Rachel, doing a couple of hours, going into different schools. What was good was it was almost like roles reversed now, because before I was the one that was getting the external agencies in, and now I was going into all these different schools where you'd really see firsthand how much do they really care about what you're doing. Are you just there, just turning up? Really, they're not really bothered. Not saying that they weren't, I'm just saying generally, you know, that all these different experiences. But while I was still finding my way, and I guess finding my purpose in life, and what was fundamentally going to make me happier, but also put me on a journey that maybe can have a wider, you know, have a wider impact, wider influence, and just really got me thinking about, why am I here? Like, what am I really doing, and what is it that I really want to do? And at the same time gaining those qualifications. So I got my level 2 at the end of 2010. Was then introduced to youth modules. So, you know, was doing that at the time. I know the qualifications look very different now, but at that time it was your youth module 1, go and do your youth module 2 and that type of thing. So by the time that I kind of stopped coaching with Rachel at Gibbons Wreckers, I'd got my youth module 3 and I had my level 2. And my youth module award, because I'd passed the assessment for the mod 3. So it was then just really looking at how I could amalgamate all these little bits I was doing, and then really thinking about, right, now I'm running out of money. So, you know, on one hand you've got your love and your passion, but we all need to survive, don't we? And fortunately I was able to go back to supply teaching, and utilize those experiences and those qualifications that I had. I was doing one-to-one tuition, and made a conscious decision that whatever it was, I would make football work. And I wanted mental health and disability work to be a big part of that. So that drove me to setting up Swaggerlicious Limited, which allowed me to gain a little bit more credibility with regards to partnering with other organizations to do work in those areas, because as a limited company it's very difficult for me to access funding. So one of the projects, for example, was linking up with Wingate and Finchley Football Club, which is my local non-league club, who were already doing some brilliant work in mental health and disability, and the person who was currently doing the work was moving on. So what I offered to do was voluntarily, you know, run a project, and was then able to link up with Middlesex County thereafter to help with some of the coaching, because of course when it's voluntary, I then still needed to work out my week to look at, okay, I need to earn X amount at the end of this week or at the end of this month. I still want this to run, because I found that particularly within that borough, and look at the engagement that I had over the years with my brother and our care workers and the social workers, the psychiatric doctors, and the external agencies within that borough. It's a real lack of provision for sport and activity, but for people with mental health, particularly adults with mental health, and those who have it where they need a full-time carer. So someone like my brother, his provision is such that he needs a carer full-time. Therefore, there needs to be activities that are tailored towards people like him and others like him. Him and others like him. And through, you know, did it for a year, did it for another year, but it's really difficult because, you know, when you're running on very little funds and you're just relying on voluntary services, it is quite limited on what you can do. So unfortunately we had to almost stop it. And I still get messages now from adults who would email me and say, you know, is it still running? Because we had a whole mixture. We had those that were like my brother, whose carers would come, and it was great because it was also an education for the support workers on, look, how can we use sport as a means of engaging with the people that you work with. And then we had people who didn't need full-time support workers who were able to just come on their own. So, you know, it was great. And it's sad that unfortunately at the moment we've had to stop running it. And it's definitely something that we'd like to kit back up again, kind of after all the pandemic, you know, say it's over and done with, but because we know that there's a need.
For sure.
It's just difficult when, like I said, that you're relying solely on voluntary services, and we also need to live and survive at the same time. So that's, you know, proven to be difficult. But during that time, I just kept connecting and was getting involved with, I was getting involved with lots of different things in the game. So even things like presenting, like I got involved with like Sports TV Tonight, which was an online show, and was doing bits with that. And then it just kind of working out, okay, what is it? Do I want to go through the route of the NCTJ? Do I want to go through the route of you know, being a coach? Is there something else for me? Is it education? And as I kept connecting, things started to evolve, and I did my B license in 2015 and passed my B license that year as well, and was coaching a grassroots club, an under 16 boys club in Leytonstone, voluntarily. So what I quickly recognized was, you know, it's all very well saying that, right, I want to work in an academy, I want to do this and I want to do that. So the bare minimum is we need to be qualified to be in a position to present ourselves, at the very least on paper. Then you've got the other thing of, you know, you're coming from an underrepresented group, but as a South Asian woman, but also as a woman, and somebody who's not played the game as a pro. You know, I grew up in a time where there wasn't a pathway for girls and women. So it's like, I'm 40 now, and certainly when I was growing up as an 8-year-old in the 80s, I played with boys in my school. You know, and for my mum, because it was in school, that had different connotations to now me on a Saturday going to a club as an Asian girl, as an Indian girl, who for my mum, it was a case of, well, I don't see any other Indian girls playing football.
Of course,
you know, but you stay at school, it's fine because you're with your brother and you're playing with your brother. And I remember going on trial to Barnet when I was 9, actually, Barnet Girls, which was our local, I'd say local elite club at the time. And my best friend Jenna was there, and they had trials. So Jenna's mum said, oh, I think get Menisha in on a trial. So anyhow, I went down and had a great time. And I remember, you know, actually remembered that, like, we were in a sports hall, which is what I remember. And the coach said to me at the end of the trial, yeah, you're in. But as soon as I got home, I just knew that it really, what difference, because I'd need someone to take me to training, which wasn't going to be the case, you know, for me. And then just recognize that when I went into secondary school in the early 90s, there was still a lack of provision for girls to play. So even though I was a little bit older and more independent, you still need some support. You need a mentor. You need somebody who's gonna give you, you know, have faith in you to kind of say, no, right, I can help you to get here, which unfortunately I didn't have at that time. So just really carried on playing street football. You know, as an early teenager at 16, I wasn't really playing. Was at college, and then it was really in the early 2000s, you know, more as an adult, where I was then going online looking at, you know, don't mind playing Sunday League, just getting back into it again. So soon recognized I wasn't going to be a player, but I didn't actually understand at the time the connotations it might have later in terms of, well, if there was a career change, how would I be perceived without having that as you know, a status? Because I do think that, you know, being a player at a good level does mean that, you know, you've got very different understanding of the game. You see the pictures a lot quicker, and I'm you know, and I recognize that. And what I knew I needed to do was I needed to be better at the things that I could get better at. And that's where Chris Ramsey came in. And Alex Welsh, it was funny because I didn't know that Chris and Alex knew each other. And it was in 2000 and 14, I'd met Chris. We were at St. George's Park. We were on a panel together talking about diversity.
Yeah.
And I didn't have my B license then anyway, because I got that the year later. But he said to me, you know, well, what do you see yourself doing? And I said, at the moment, I don't really know. I like coaching, but I've also got this educational experience and background. I'm still finding my way. And he said to me, whatever you do and whatever you decide, get time on the grass and don't rush anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, that's stuck with me. And lo and behold, a couple of seasons later, I connected with Chris again. So this time we were at Troy Townsend's Kick It Out event, and we were both mentors.
Big up, Troy.
Yeah, big up, Troy. And I said to Chris, oh, you know, how you doing? You know, we had a conversation, and he said to me, well, what are you up to now? And I said, well, I've been at Middlesex at the Girls Centre of Excellence part-time and then freelancing through my company. But Middlesex were folding. So I said, look, it's either I look for a job in the women's game, or, you know, I kind of, really, actually, that was my only option, to be honest. There wasn't even I look at something else. I was actually actively looking for RTC jobs.
Okay.
But he said to me, look, I've got no jobs at QPR, but have you got your B license? And I said, yeah, I've got my B license. I've got my youth award. Yeah. And he said, right, well, you're more than, I'm happy for you to come in and volunteer. Look, I haven't got any jobs. And I said, no, that's fine. You know, look, I'll do what I need to do to earn money. Yeah. But I just want an experience to be able to access a professional football club. Yeah. Yeah. And that was that, really. And, you know, I would be there at 10 o'clock. I'd man mark him. Any meeting I was allowed to go into, I'd go to. I'd speak to the under 18 staff, the PDP staff. I'd stay there till the evening to look at the schoolboys across the road, just so that I could get an understanding of, first of all, what is an academy? Yeah, yeah. How does it differ to a school? Because what Chris was really good at was he kept getting me to reflect back to, right, you've been in a school, you've helped run a school. This is no different. It's just it's just a football school. Yeah. And he started to get me to connect the departments, learn more about what the different departments do, and how, you know, in terms of like a multidisciplinary approach, how these departments help to develop the players. And then it was really learning about the philosophy at the club and what Chris wanted. So what's his philosophy at QPR? How does that philosophy work across the development continuum? So whether you're working with a 9 or working with an under 16, it wasn't a case of knowing it like the back of your hand, but I recognized that I needed to learn the philosophy like the back of my hand. Yeah, yeah. Because I needed to put myself in a position where if there was a job and an opportunity presented itself, I'm able to actively show and demonstrate that, look, I may not have been in this environment for as long as many others, but I've got the qualifications. You know, I spent almost 200 hours volunteering. It was about 4 months. And I'd earn money elsewhere, like doing supply and things like that. I'd make sure I put aside at least 15 hours on a minimum a week to make sure I was at the club. And, you know, 4 months later, what that did do was put me in a position where actually it wasn't the case that I was the best coach, but I knew the philosophy, I knew what he wanted, but more importantly, he knew that I was going to be moldable when I wanted to learn. So when there was a change in staff, I remember it was 2016 September, I started with the under 9s, and that was the best thing that happened to me, because it really got me, and especially working under Chris and his mentorship and his tuition on breaking down the mechanics, how it works, and honing in on, like, you know, talk about the basics, but really like the whole thing that, like, Paul McGuinness is talking about at the moment, you know, the how you really put things under the microscope. Yeah. So was then with the under 9s for a couple of seasons, and Chris and Alex Carroll Academy director approached me about ECAS, which is a Premier League program, and in essence it places you, but it's a paid placement, so you get placed in a club for 4 months. I was already at a club, so I didn't need to be placed. Funny enough, I actually applied for ECAS through Riz Rahman, who's at the PFA, before I was at QPR, and I didn't get on. I got through interview though, and it was a great experience. But one of the questions I asked was, what is it I actually need to do? And what came back was, it was my lack of understanding or knowledge around club philosophy.
Okay.
And you catch 22, because although I was working in these different environments, I was at Middlesex, still doing my grassroots coaching, you can only gain experiences based on the environments you're in.
Yeah.
So really, the only thing I could really do was just continue doing what I was doing, really, until other opportunities come up. Now, then the QPR opportunity came up, which worked out really well. So, I said to Chris and Alex, if you guys feel that you have faith in me, and this was an opportunity to get me in full time if I was successful, definitely, I'd work around whatever else I'm doing. This for me is a great opportunity. So anyhow, it's funny because when I got to interview, they applied on my behalf, and a couple of the people on the interview panel were the same as before. And for me, it was great because I said to them, look, I've been here before, but I was so much more confident in my presentation. I was able to give tangible evidence of me being at the club for 2 seasons, what I felt I could offer, what I felt that this full-time opportunity could do for me, and also how we could benefit the club. And then I got onto ECAS, and then that put me in full-time as foundation phase lead. And so my responsibilities evolved a season later again, purely based on, and it's what I really like about Chris. So we've got, those who know QPRs, we're very much about a strength-based, capability-based program. But what I like about what Chris and Alex have done with me is recognize what could my pathway in football look like. And there's been, I think self-awareness is really important in this, for anybody really thinking about how they can navigate themselves within the professional game. And I was self-aware about, like I mentioned earlier, that not being a pro, that there's certain things that I'm just not going to be better placed to do. But there are other people who will be. But there are other skills that I can bring to the table. So I've been, my last role was a deputy head. I've got a lot of strategic experience. I've also got knowledge and understanding around child development and learning, which I can apply. And I've got the qualifications in coaching that's required. So there'd be things that I would be able to complement. And overseeing, let's say, the foundation phase as a department was, in essence, for me, was almost no different to when I was a head of key stage. It's in a different context, it's a different environment, so that has its own nuances, which you learn over time. That I only I've become better at knowing those things the more times I've done it. And going back to recognizing things that I could offer, so I work very closely with Chris and Alex with regards to like schoolboy operations, and for me that's all about building longevity for me in the game, but it's also about Chris helping me recognize where I could go, jobs I could do. So an assistant academy manager, an assistant head of coaching. Now I know that those types of roles don't actually exist because we haven't got assistants in it, but I'm at a place in my, I guess, in my mind, in my life right now, where I feel that, and I tell you, it's Paul Holder. So he's our FAYCD, and I've become really close to Paul Holder over the last few months. who's really got me to think about how I can be a good number two.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's a skill set in its own. Mm-hmm. It's how can you help complement and still foster growth and development, but where you're not necessarily the one who's, you know, out there.
Yeah, not the face as such.
Yeah, and also, like, in terms of skill set, you know, that I want to be a really good number two to Chris, a really good number two to him in terms of his role as head of coaching. I want to be able to make his life as easy as possible so that he can focus on getting players into the team.
Yeah.
And if I can then complement those, the other skills that you know, or the responsibilities that come as part of head of coaching, like all the admin around that job, that's actually fostering and nurturing my development. It's making me better, but it's also forging a pathway for me in terms of what I can be good or better at. And I think that me recognizing and actually understanding and having Chris and Alex to help me do that, and also Paul Holder as well, that what is it you actually want to do? So I was very honest about, look, I don't want to be the first team coach or that type of job. And I said, if I'm honest, it's not even a one. I'm not best placed to do that type of job. There are other people who are going to be better than me in doing that. I love coaching. I want to be in the youth, like, you know, youth development. I want to work with like within the development continuum. I'm on my A license at the moment. I passed my advanced youth award earlier on this year.
Amazing.
You know, so I still want to continue educating myself as a coach, keep getting better as a coach, and be in a position where I am respected as a coach. But all I'm saying is that there are better people out there to be the under-18s coach than me. But what I can do is actually help those jobs run by helping to run a department. But at the same time, still be in a position to be able to coach.
It's amazing. Sorry. It's just sorry to cut you off there, Manisha, but it's just like, just hearing you speak, the depth of knowledge that you have and the depth of wanting to get better is something that's very admirable. Even things like just going back to your first, the initial start of, you know, how the journey kind of started for you. It's very selfless. It's very, again, brave of you to dive into an industry that is very male driven. There's not many full-time positions, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, want to get involved in football, but like you said, people have bills to pay. You've been doing the voluntary work for nearly up to 4 months, you said, at that time in your period where a lot of people would give up. You know, I've been through that route myself where I've done voluntary for nearly up to a year just to be part of an organization, just so I can learn and things like that. So for you to do that, I think it shows and gives a strong message to anyone that's listening as well, that you have to do the groundwork. You have to be around an environment that you are going to learn. You have to be able to be adaptable to these situations. And it's a long journey. And again, just hearing you cover so much, and I know there's a lot more that you have as well that you've accomplished and that you've probably missed out. But just to hear that, again, it's motivation for myself, and I'm sure for anyone that's listening as well, it's motivational for them as well. Like, for you to continue and to keep growing and to keep, you know, just elevating yourself. You could have got to the stage where it could have been really, what's the word? It's just, you made a whole transition of being in a full-time position, and you've done so much work in that sort of environment, to completely go into another route where you had no, you just didn't have a what's the word again? I've kind of
didn't have any credibility.
Well,
didn't have any reputation, any credibility in the game.
that is a big part, but also just in terms of, like you said, you didn't know that there's actually qualifications for this. Do you know what I mean? So for someone to come from that level to where you are now, you could have said, you know what, I'm happy where I am. I'm happy to where I've got to. I'm proud of where I've got to, because you should be. I'm sure you are anyway. But like, again, here with you want to get to that next stage. You want to develop. You want to take it to that next level. And again, it's very admirable. It's very motivational for myself. But for you to keep busy like that, was it a form of like kind of putting aside of what's going on as well in life, because obviously life is hard. Was that a sense of just trying to keep busy and trying to keep yourself motivated?
Yeah, it's like my work has become my go-to.
Yeah.
Now, look, I'm not saying that it's a good strategy or the best strategy.
Yeah. But it works for you.
It works for me.
Mm.
And where I started this journey in doing it for my brother, I've now been able to come to a place in myself where this journey is more than that. Mm-hmm. This journey actually is about me recognizing if I can forge a pathway into, like you said, a very male-dominated, a very white-dominated industry, and be full-time, utilizing the mentoring that I have from the people around me, I think that it can help open doors for other people.
For sure.
Because what we don't want to do is to keep having these conversations. And even like I think about when I was in education, there were very few Black head teachers for me to look up to, very few South Asian head teachers for me to look up to. I was put on courses, just like I have been for football, no different for underrepresented people who want to become senior leaders in schools. That I didn't know at the time. I didn't actually understand it at the time. It was only because in football, especially in the professional game, that it's so ruthless, it's so cutthroat. The culture is still an old boys club, that really opened my eyes into, wow, this is very different.
Yeah.
If I didn't have my home situation as it is, I don't think I would have built as much resilience. Yeah. And resilience is thrown around quite a lot, but if for somebody to come into the professional game, you have to have a lot of resilience.
For sure.
Because it's very, very challenging. It's mentally draining. And you can look, I'm in a great place because I'm in a fantastic club. I'm in a club that, is extremely multicultural, but not just what you see on the eye, but I'm talking about in all aspects of the way that the club operates. There's some great people at the club, at QPR, but that doesn't negate the fact that football as a whole isn't sexist.
Of course, yeah.
Or doesn't make any judgments because of difference in general. It's still been really challenging because you're coming into an environment, like you said, where you haven't. I'm going to be like many others who have not played the game as a pro. So you're coming in already as that. Then you're coming in where, like you said, it's a completely new industry. People don't know you. I lack credibility. I'm really small in stature. So there's already perceptions. When I first came in, people thought I was a student. And I came in and I was 36.
Yeah.
Been a deputy head and a trainee head.
Yeah.
Right. So, you're having to really manage and deal with a very different dynamic, very male heavy. So forget the fact that it's diverse, it's still male heavy.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
used to managing women in primary schools.
Yeah.
So even when I took the transition to, becoming full-time, and I was foundation phase lead, that it's been a journey, because I know for some people have commented, for example, and said, but you're a QPR, you're under Chris, and it's great. And yeah, I am. And I will proudly say, yeah, I'm at a fantastic club. I have fantastic mentoring. Chris Ramsey for me is he is the best player and person developer that I know, or in the country. So of course I do, and Alex Carroll, our academy director, likewise, but it's still a very male dominated environment. You still, as an age, as a woman, and then coming, like I say, as an Indian woman, I'm still navigating my way through an environment that doesn't have people that look like me. So I go to away games, how many of them look like me in my role? So I'm still assumed the physio. I'm hard, it's not she's in charge, or she's actually the under 13s coach. There's been me and my colleague Laban, we've had jokes because you just got to get on with it. And look, I think things are about change. So for me, everything's about how can we change culture? How can we change mindset? That takes time.
Do you think there's a change? Do you think there's enough work being done?
So that was what I was going to come on to, that, if I look back now to 4 seasons ago, definitely. I think that with anything, things take time. But I think what's really important for any change to occur, you need to have a support network that equally believes in that. So I'm at a club where, from the owners to Les Ferdinand, to Chris, to Alex, right the way down to up to part-time coaches, where there is this culture of change, and people embrace difference, and we can have open. There's challenging conversations. But we can be open about that. But I'm lucky that I've got Chris and I've got Alex, who are in the position to influence the change within the academy. Now, if I didn't have that, then it would be very different, because it'd be a constant battle. Just because you're fighting with ignorance, you're fighting with people who've been doing the same thing over and over again, for years. And if you're them, you're like, well, why change it? Why have you got someone else in? Who's that? What does she know about football? So it takes time. So I've seen the change, but I'm basing this on my personal experience of me being in a real embracing environment. But I also know there are other women who are on ECAS, the same cohort as me, to women who are no longer at professional football clubs, whose experiences have been very different to mine. So I think fundamentally everything's about your support network, the environment and the culture of the club. Are the decision makers embracing of change? Are they, when they say that they're looking for the best people for the jobs, are they really looking for the best people for the jobs? Or is it easy just to say, well, I know him, I'll just get him because I know him. So I think there's a lot more being done now. There's a lot more open and challenging conversations. There's a lot more people now who have profile and prominence that are using their voices. And I think that's key, because you have to. And like I said, for me, it's, now that I've embraced this journey, I can't season after season keep having the same conversations, because otherwise, for me, on a personal level, I'm looking at myself thinking, what have I done? Because it's not about me being in the job. It's about how can me being in the job have an influence. And that's only going to come with time. And what I recognize is that if I keep learning and keep bettering myself, and keep forging my way into being able to retain a job, and have longevity, hopefully that can then open doors for other people like me, really.
And something that you spoke about as well, the support network, I think that's huge. I think that's very vital for someone to have a strong support network. In your opinion, how do you create that sort of support network?
Look, I was lucky that I bumped into Chris in 2014, and then I was really good friends. I got to know Andrew Impey, who is our under 23s coach, and he was at QPR, because he played for QPR, but he was there. But it wasn't a case where I said to it's all right, I want you to put in a good word or anything like that. He happened to be there. We'd formed a friendship through through Kick It Out, actually. And what I liked when I would speak to him, he was always very honest about what the environment is like, what the culture's like, but would also be very encouraging of, no, don't worry about that. You just got to get on with it. You got to just get on with it, you know, but not get on with it in a negative way. Get on with it as in like, be determined, you know, keep pushing. And when I'd met, you know, like when I met Chris again, look, football's a small world and people talk. So I think what's really important is when you connect, I'm sure people do this anyway, but it's really consider, how do you present yourself? What do you want people to remember you by? The moment you walk into the room to the moment that you leave. And what is it you want to get out of these connections and these conversations? And when Chris happened to be talking, Chris said to me, but Im said, like, you know, that obviously he knows me and she'll be cool. Now, in other words, what I wouldn't do is go in there, you know, thinking that I know everything there is to know. What I was going to do was to be humble. You know, I'm very self-aware. I always kind of question, try to check myself. I understand where I am in my journey. I understand what I don't know, and I understand what my strengths are and what I can get better at. I think that's the biggest thing, because that's helped me along the way. And with those connections, it has really been about humility, about how you present yourself. And I think if you can be humble and be honest about where you're at in your journey, people will want to help. You know, look, that's only my experience. That's what's helped me, and that's how these connections. Like I said, I didn't know Alex knew Chris. Alex has been a mentor for me since 2010. You know, then that helps. And then, you know, later on through the journey, that there's many other people like, you know, Tommy Yulden, Ted Dale, Colin Reed, and people who everyone knows each other, like Jeff Pike, people, some still in the game, some no longer in the game in terms of coach education. But it's such a small network that I think, you know, ask questions, be inquisitive, have humility, and be willing to take the time to learn your trade, because that's key. It's not a rush.
Definitely not. And I think, do you know what? I think I'm not saying that you're undervaluing yourself in terms of that Chris just turned up for you. I think what's powerful in what you just said is you're putting yourself in these positions. Like, you're going to these places. Not many people like to do that. Like, as much as it might be hard for someone to kind of present themselves and, you know, be around the room where, again, it might feel a bit intimidating. I'm not saying that you've overcome it, because it's always a journey, but you've gone past that and you're saying, you know what, I need to be in this environment. If I'm going to succeed, I need to go to this place. And it's like one thing connects to another. And I think that's very, very powerful in what you do. And I think that's something that, you know, a lot of people should take on board, is like, you have to be in that environment. If you want to be in the football industry, for instance, or if you want to be in the movie industry or whatever, teaching industry, you have to be around people that are doing that sort of job or in the environment. And I think, again, that's something that's not being spoken about enough in terms of like putting yourself in a position, putting yourself in uncomfortable positions as well, is something that is not spoken about. Everyone thinks it's a walk in the park sometimes, that you're just going to get a job in an academy system and, you know, you're going to start coaching full time, but that's not the case. So it's about doing the groundwork, again, which you've explained. And again, just everything that you said is very, very motivational. I'm sure going forward, you've got a lot more that you want to achieve. So what is the future for Manisha Tailor?
So in football, I alluded to it earlier in the conversation, that I want to be a good number two. I see myself developing in a strategic operational type role. If it is at a club, look, I'd love to be an assistant head of coaching, assistant academy manager at some stage, and be able to complement somebody who's better equipped to be the face, complement them and complement their skills. And outside of football, I had, for a number of years, I've been working on the mental health project, but I did a prototype book a number of years ago. It's a teaching resource. And during the first lockdown, I kind of thought, okay, I really want to make this work, and I want it to reach as many young people and teachers as possible. So worked on it again. Unfortunately, it got signed with a publisher, an educational publisher, Routledge Education. So
amazing.
That is going to be released by this April. It's called 50 Wellbeing Lessons for the Diverse Primary Classroom. And it's, although fundamentally geared towards primary school teachers, it's also that the nature of some of the lesson plans and photocopiable resources are such that there are also activities for youth professionals who work with young people in sport. So as an example, I've got an activity in there which is around, there's a whole section on Black Lives Matter. And I've used Hope Howe as one of the characters. And there's a story about Hope Howe that I've written. And that story or that activity can be used in schools, but that activity can also be used at Grassroots Club and other youth organizations by sports coaches. So it's not just specific to schools, although that probably is going to be the primary audience. So I'm excited to be, hopefully soon, when I can kind of put out what the title, the cover design and things like that. Be excited to plug that and just get that out there, really.
For sure.
I want it to reach as many people as possible.
Well, we'll definitely be plugging it on the channel, on the social media. So once that's out, people will obviously be plugging it out. Again, congratulations on that. Also, that's a huge milestone. Again, the main word for me today is motivation. Like the things that you've just said, it's like you've beaten the odds, of just things in life that sometimes people don't really think that they can achieve. I think that's very, very important, that no matter what you want to do, once you put your mind and you put in the work, that you can actually achieve things. And again, like I said, I'm sure you got so much more barriers that you want to break down. I'm sure your future ambitions that you spoke about, I do believe that you can do it just from your track record. I always go by, what have people done in terms of like your behavior. What do you usually do? You can always change your behavior, but it's like your proven track record. If you've been doing this for the past 5-10 years, then you've been doing great things. I'm sure by the time you get to that stage where you want to become a number 2, I'm sure you'll get there. But also just hearing again you're selfless in terms of giving what you can to your brother, helping him out. I think that's kind of transferred into your workplace as well, where it's like you want to give to others so they can perform the best. Do you feel sometimes where do you get the support in terms of your mental health? Where do you get that? Because it just seems like you're always giving to others. You're always trying to make sure that others are okay. How do you find a place for you to kind of be in peace or in awe of yourself?
So I think that's where the support for me, so for example, I'll go back to someone like Chris. Chris is also a really good friend.
Yeah.
And I think the motivation that I get from him motivates me to keep pursuing, to keep persevering and carrying on. Because, you think about a role that involves working with young people, you have to care about children and young people.
Yeah.
If you don't care about children, very difficult to do this type of role. And when I came into the academy system, I just thought that young people who have dreams, they've got dreams of becoming professional footballers.
Yep.
That is our job. Our job is to help them to try and be the best that they can be, with a hope that they can achieve their dream. And I think that you have to care, like, where, when, for example, if the players are injured and things like that, that you have to show that you care.
Yeah.
And that whole, the thing around what inspires you and what keeps you going, and around, your own well-being, that for me comes from my support. And if I have my support, then all that, the energy, that energy that you give when you are doing your role, be that with the players, that might be, you know, in the office or whatever it might be, or with other staff. You have to be, you want to, you know, give it your all. Because when you're in that type of environment, I think enthusiasm is everything, isn't it? Yeah. If you're enthusiastic, that it helps you navigate that connection with the players or with staff. And I think, look, we're all going to come. There's times, even me, where you're a little bit down, you're a little bit tired, you know, you're a little bit low. But I think fundamentally, you got to be enthusiastic. You have to really care about the players. And, you know, going back to what you said to me, that while I've got my support network, that keeps me motivated.
Powerful. Right, last one from me, Menisha. What's the best lesson you've learned in the last 6 months?
The last 6 months, the best lesson that I've learned is patience. That even myself, where I think that I'm patient, but actually I can also be very impatient, where I will look at, I've been doing this for this amount of time, and, you know, I want to progress, I want to do this, and I want to do that. That actually, you know, take time to learn, and timing is everything. So now what I do is I always go back to that phrase of timing is everything, and be patient, because I might want to do something now, whereas actually doing it in 2 weeks' time is not really going to make a difference. But the biggest difference it will make is that it will be better achieved, because I've taken more time, rather than rushing and thinking that I can do everything that there is to do in one hit. And that's also part of my development, where I'll just want to do everything that there is to do. So a lot of my development, in the last 6 months has been around time and patience.
Powerful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you found it valuable. I'm sure it's been motivational. Again, I kept using that word today. It definitely has for me. Incredible stuff. Like, literally, there was not much questions asked by me, because I felt like just hearing you speak, I felt like it was more than enough to kind of get out what we wanted out of this conversation, this session. Like I said, it's very valuable, very, very valuable for anyone that's listening. We'll definitely put Swaggerlicious, the Instagram handle, we'll leave it in the description. For the book, once it comes out, we'll definitely be plugging that in. Make sure to check that out. Make sure to follow Menisha on the Instagram and all the other social networks that we'll be putting below. If you haven't liked, comment, subscribe, make sure you do that as well to the channel, so we can continue giving out valuable content. And again, Menisha, honestly, it's been inspirational for myself, valuable. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your journey. I know sometimes it's not the easiest to speak about, just personal stuff as well, but you speaking out, I'm sure there's people that's in a similar position as yourself, or, are going through some sort of stuff. And, just for hearing you speak again, it's given me that motivation, that urge to get up and do things, because sometimes I do find myself in moments where I'm like, what am I doing? What should I do today? Or do you know what I mean? It's like, but just hearing you speak now, it's what you spoke about earlier on, is that energy. And, it's important to be around the good energy, to be around people that are motivated. I think that's the energy that, if you want to succeed, or if you want to get into a position where you're doing something that you value or that you want to do, it's important to put yourself around those people. So, Menisha, honestly, thank you very much. Thank you for taking your time. Wish you the best for this new year. I'm sure you're going to go places. I'm sure you're going to smash your targets. Good luck on everything that you're doing, your A license and everything else that you put your mind to.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.